and all their legal resources. We're excited to be here, and we're excited to be doing some of these fireside chat webinars with you guys to really just talk with you. One of the things you're going to see us doing more and more as part of our partnership with SBAM is our ability to really be able to create value for the members. We really want to be able to service you. We realize how important legal is for small businesses, yet how often it gets overlooked. So you're going to be seeing us rolling out a lot of content and resources for you in the months and in the next year to come. So I want to thank you for that. Want a big plug for the legal hotline. If you're a premium VIP or elite member, make sure to take advantage of that to get a fact-based question asked whenever you need it. I'd be remiss to say it's not just Michael Melfi, it's John Mashni, as well as Karolina. I want to thank you guys for being a part of the team, my partners that help bring this service to SBAM and to the members. And so when you think of us, you think of the team at Mavacy, we're here to support you. And with that, we're going to kick it off. Today's topic is really about protecting your small business. And we wanted to start with this for really two reasons. One is your business is your asset. Your business is your baby. Your business is something that brings not just joy to you, hopefully, but also brings you monetary gain and all the other things that come with owning a business. And so protecting it, keeping it safe is important. So we hope today you're able to have a few takeaways that you're able to utilize. And I think the second part is we're going to be diving deeper. So we want to start with a higher level. In the months and the quarters to come, we're going to have additional information about these different topic areas. So if there's something that sticks out to you, don't be afraid to put it in the chat. Say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about whatever we're talking about. We love your feedback. We're definitely, use the chat function and definitely give us feedback on that. But we're going to be diving into more detail on some of these subject matters. With that being said, two housekeeping things. One, definitely, please, any questions you have, put them in the chat. We're going to try to talk quickly so we can definitely get questions at the end. And if we don't get to them, we'll definitely address them afterwards. But put all your questions there, and we can definitely take care of it. The other thing is you should have received or will be receiving a worksheet. And so the reason we gave that to you is that we didn't want to just be talking heads on the screen. The idea is we want to help really empower you to really take your business to the next level. And having your legal foundation in place is an important part. So as we get going today, you're going to see there's 5 topics we're going to cover from that worksheet that we gave you. And really what we're looking for is for you to think about, how does this apply to my business? And what can I do to take steps to move that forward? And hopefully we can be there to support you. SBAM can be there to support you, but we can help get you the resources to really level up your business. And so with that being said, I'll turn it over to Karolina to go ahead and dive right in. I think you're going to share the screen to get started.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Let me get this going. All right. So first, and Michael, I'm surprised that you didn't make our lawyers made us do this joke. But just so everybody knows, this is purely informational today. If you have any specific questions about your particular circumstances, we're always happy to chat with you. Our contact information will be on the last slide, and I'm pretty sure it was also shared in the handout that was sent out. All right, pre-frame. Michael did a great job of introducing what we're going to be talking about today, so I'm going to skip over the slide. Next slide, we're just going to, I know this is a somewhat contentious topic, but we're just going to quickly touch on it because it is important. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Corporate Transparency Act, which was enacted in 2021 and came into effect in January of this year. And really at the heart of it, this is just a requirement to file who the beneficial owner is of any small or medium-sized company. There are a number of challenges, including by SBAM, that have been filed against the act. So I would say more to come on where we go with the CTA, but just wanted to highlight this as something that you should at least have on your radar and be aware of. All right, so I would say that I'm probably the contracts person of the group. So this is going to be me nerding out on contracts. And a little background on how I came to Mavacy was I started my career as a litigator. And one of the types of cases that I handled a lot was breach of contract cases. And in my brief and we'll call it soul-sucking time as a litigator, I realized that a lot of the litigation that my clients faced was because they had really bad contracts. Now, on the opposite side of I guess, the contract process. I understand, you know, as business owners, you want to move quick. You want to make sure that you want to get to, you know, whatever it is that you're purchasing or hiring that employee, or, you know, any number of things where a contract would, it kind of comes into play, and there's T's and C's. While I understand that part of it, also being on the other side of it, the contract drafting process is, I think, in a time that is sometimes really skimmed over. And on the screen, you'll see there are just a number of statistics that small businesses face that are costly, and again, could have been prevented if the contract had been looked at a little bit more carefully. So when we're talking about a clear and well-drafted contract, it can really help reduce a lot of different issues that your small business will face. As an example, I had a client, they stained masonry, and they ended up getting into a dispute with the contractor that had hired them. There was issues around the specs. There was issues around what each party's responsibilities were, how many times they were going to fix things up, et cetera, et cetera. When I got a copy of the contract, it was covered in handwriting and initials and things crossed out. So there was really no clear, defined terms around what each side was supposed to do, which in the end resulted in litigation and the client, like both sides spending a ton of money on attorneys and litigation and court fees and whatnot. And at the end of the day, nobody was happy. So when I'm looking at a contract, I'm looking at things like, okay, IP, you're a small business, you want to make sure that you're protecting your IP. Does the contract clearly spell out who owns what? We're going to get into cybersecurity and data privacy later with John, as well as some more IP discussions with John. But as far as like data privacy and security, who's responsible for what? If you're handing over some of your data, whether it be your employees' data, your customers' data, things that are really sensitive, how is that being protected? Like if you're handing over that type of sensitive data to a vendor, what types of security measures do they have in place to make sure that that's protected? Because at the end of the day, if there's a breach, there may be things that fall on you, and you're like, but it was this guy's fault. It's like, well, it doesn't matter based on, you know, the law and whatnot. Like I said, here creates a roadmap. That's how I like to really paint it for clients, like whether you're dealing with a business partner, whether you're dealing with an employee, a vendor, customers, things like that. The contract process is a time for you to really sit down and think, okay, how is this relationship going to work? What are we all going to be doing? And so that when there is an issue, you can look back at the contract and say, okay, actually, you know what, this wasn't part of the scope, or actually, this was your responsibility as an employee, and so on and so forth. So even though it can be a painful process, and I know a lot of times it's pretty mind-numbing to look at T's and C's and think, oh man, I have to read this 10-page document. That's where I come in and I nerd out on it. But it really is an opportunity to like pause and think through, okay, like how is this going to look, so that if there is some type of issue down the road, we can address it by looking at the agreement versus having to go into litigation, which I can guarantee nobody is going to come out the other end happy. All right, John, you're up.
All right. Thanks, Karolina. And by the way, yeah, I know you are definitely very adept and efficient at reviewing contracts. So it's all that stuff's great information. So, hey, everyone, John Mashni, really glad to be here. I get to talk about IP, intellectual property first. I'm going to just cover really quick definitions so we're on the same page. And then I'm going to cover some problem areas too, where this is things to look out for. So first, what is intellectual property? And there's really four main types, even though I feel like recently there are some extra ones, which I'll cover really briefly. But the first one I want to talk about, most people are familiar, is a trademark, right? This is a word or symbol that's the identifier for goods or services, right? This is the name of your company or your logo, right? Things like that. The Nike swoosh, the Apple for Apple computers. That's what we call protected by trademark law. And it's very, very important to businesses, right? That's how customers identify you. The second one is copyright, and this just protects anything that is created. So usually it's a book, a song, a movie, a video, marketing materials, right? If you create content for your business, it is protected by copyright. The third one is patents. Patents are inventions, things that you or your company invents, and you can have a legal right to exclude other people from using it. And usually when people think of intellectual property, they think of patents, they think of an invention. The fourth one is what we call a trade secret, which is kind of the opposite of a patent. A patent you have to disclose to the government, and then you get protection for it. But a trade secret, you actually don't tell anybody, and you don't file anything, and it has economic value and value to your company because nobody else knows what it is. And anyone that does know it has a confidentiality agreement or a NDA or something that binds them to certain restrictions on who they can reveal this confidential trade secret to. And with a trade secret, if you are going to claim a trade secret, you have to absolutely have a confidentiality agreement or an NDA with every single person that touches any of that information. And frankly, you don't even tell very many people. You only tell the people that you need to tell. So those are the 4 types of intellectual property. There are some other types that some of you may be learning about, with like name, identity, likeness, where college athletes have really found a way to make extra money by licensing their name, identity, and likeness, and many businesses are paying athletes all over all types of different sports to license their name, identity, and likeness. So that's kind of a newer area. And there are some other ones, but these are the 4 main ones. If you can go to the next slide, Karolina. So one thing I want to talk about too is, so I gave you the basics, the definitions, but I want to talk about how to think about intellectual property. I don't just want to lecture on, hey, here's what it is. I want you to understand how to think about it. And I think of it in 2 different kind of categories. You could say offense and defense. You could say, the sword and the shield, right? But really, it's offense and defense. And let me explain that. If you want to be on offense, you want to go and look for people who could potentially be infringing, or maybe you find out about someone who is infringing your intellectual property or using it without your permission, and you want to stop them. You can send them a cease and desist letter. You can take them to court. You might have some claims, some damages you could pursue, right? That's offense. You're going out, you find out someone's using it, or there's a threat that is someone could use your intellectual property, whether it's a patent, a trademark, a copyright, or a trade secret, or even your name, identity, and likeness. And you do something to get them to stop. That's what I call offense. Defense is where you want to make sure that no one else can stop you from using your IP. And this is actually a pretty big issue for a lot of people. So someone might get a letter one day and they send it to us and they say, hey, this other company is telling me to stop using my trademark, right? That's a problem. And how can I protect myself from this? So that's how do you take what you're using right now for, let's say, your brand, your logo, the name of your company, and make sure that no one can get you to stop it. And that's what we call defense. And there's different strategies to follow to do those things. Can you go to the next slide, Karolina? So I want to kind of go over some common mistakes that I see, because we don't have much time, but this is just about protecting your business. So number 1, I want you to think about, do you actually own your intellectual property? And let me explain that very quickly. So when you hire someone to create intellectual property for you, let's say you hire an employee or an independent contractor to create something for you. It could be a marketing video. It could be a process procedure. It could be lots of different things. It could be your own logo, frankly. You have to make sure that you own whatever they create, and it's not automatic. If they're an employee, then there are provisions that say, like, yes, if you ask your W-2 employee to create something for you in the scope of their employment, then you, the employer, own that intellectual property. But if it's a contractor, in many cases, we hire contractors to create graphics for us, or videos, or other intellectual property for us, then that intellectual property ownership doesn't actually automatically vest in you, the employer. So you have to make sure that you have proper contracts, proper contract language, like Karolina was talking about, that says that you own it. Like, I've had people call me and they realized we had a conversation, they didn't even own their own logo. So that's why it's important. Make sure you understand what you own and what you don't own, and what rights you're getting. And that leads right into the next one, which I find all the time, is hiring vendors. When you hire a vendor, are you properly specifying who owns what intellectual property? And then just to kind of go back to my trademark discussion, just had a conversation 2 days ago with a client, and he was saying, oh, I searched on Google, I looked up my company name. It looks really good. There's just this one other company that has a very similar name, but does that matter? I think it's different enough. And when I looked at it, I said, no, it's almost the exact same word, and they have a registration. So this person was thinking, oh, I didn't need a trademark registration, right? I'm fine. But we identified there was a big risk, right? And they could do nothing and they could be totally fine and just wait and see. But the weight and the nature of what they were doing versus what this other company was doing, I basically said it's probably just a matter of time before they reach out. And they were a prior user, so they would probably win if you did end up in a dispute. So make sure you understand, like, hey, if this brand is important, the name of my company is important, and I'm using it in the marketplace, in trade, in commerce, do I actually need to protect this trademark? So it's something to think about, especially if you want to have value for your company. Sometimes intellectual property is the most valuable part of your business. And the fourth one that I see all the time is if your business creates content, I want to just make sure you understand the difference between a copyright and a copyright registration, because I hear all the time, and sometimes you hear things like people will do things to protect their copyrights. They'll send themselves something in the mail, right, and not open it and say, hey, here's proof that I created it before somebody else, sometimes called a poor person's copyright. The reality is, if you're creating content for your business, I do think you should have a copyright registration strategy. And here's why. Because if you don't have a copyright registration, which means you don't submit an application, and actually the government will issue you a registration certificate. If you don't have that registration certificate, you cannot sue. You cannot even go to court to enforce your rights as a copyright. So that's a big issue. If it's important to you, let's say you're creating content or you don't want someone to steal it from you and use it, and then they do end up stealing it, you can't even do anything to them. You can't even get them to stop unless you have that registration. And sometimes it could take 6 to 12 months to get that registration. So it's important to understand why you need to have that registration. And then the other part is, if you have the registration at the time that this infringement occurs, the other side has to pay all of your attorney's fees, which I know people don't really like paying attorneys. But if you have that registration and someone infringes, then the other side has to pay all of your attorney's fees, which is a really, really kind of big incentive to not steal other people's copyrights. And that's, I think that's what I wanted to talk through on IP. I'm happy to entertain questions on that as well. And that kind of naturally leads into what is a big area. And for the last, I don't know, I feel like 8 to 10 years, cybersecurity has just grown every single year in terms of the threats that are out there, and also the protections that people take, right? That it becomes more and more important. I feel like every single day, understand cybersecurity and how to protect yourself. To me, it's critical. And if you think of what it really means, I want to kind of go through a few scenarios. If you can go to the next slide, Karolina. So I want to go through a couple scenarios and just walk through some of the big issues. I'm not going to explain every single piece here, but I want to go through some of the big issues of what is very typical. And I personally, and our firm has dealt with, I would say several times, unfortunately. Here's scenario one. Executives on vacation, traveling, don't have good cell phone service. It's a Friday afternoon, right? Everyone's checking email on Friday afternoon. Lots of fun, right? You get this urgent email. The CEO says, hey, I need you to send me this document that has everybody's employees, a list of employees, and a list of personal info. It's like, oh, okay. You're just trying to get through your email, right? You reply, attach the doc, there you go. And then once that person hits send, they realize, hey, that didn't seem, something seemed a little off, right? Tries to stop the email, can't do it. So he follows up, says, hey, just check in. Did you really ask me for this email? And CEO says, no, I didn't send you any emails. I thought you were on vacation. I wasn't going to bug you. Well, someone had spoofed the email, and now a third party, bad guy, has the organization, an entire list of the organization's employees, including social security numbers. So this is a big problem. You can go to the next slide, Karolina. So there are laws that address what has to happen when personal information, including social security numbers, gets compromised, right? And social security number and a name is absolutely information that is protected under law. And Michigan has very specific laws about this. You have to notify employees. In some cases, it might be in multiple states. In some cases, there's a duty to notify the attorney general. You might even, depending on the size of the organization, have to notify different credit reporting agencies. You might have to provide certain services. You have to go through this analysis of what actually happened and trying to repair. And some things you can't repair, right? Your reputational harm. And in many cases, you might want to, try to pursue some claim against the bad guy here. But it's very often difficult to do if they're out of the country or in some of these cybersecurity farms, so to speak, in different countries where they just go, try to hack and try to break into different systems. And in some cases, you even have to assess, it wasn't an inside job. Did somebody actually intentionally harm me? So those are some of the issues that we've helped people through and things that you need to look out for. That's just one scenario. Let's go to the next slide and I'll kind of walk through the second scenario here. Just something to think about. This is what we call wire transfer fraud, right? You have a vendor and a supplier and you have a big supply contract. I just use one example that's similar to something I dealt with a couple of years ago. The supplier usually pays by check, right? And so supplier will then gets an email from accounts payable, and they say, hey, we don't accept checks anymore. We're only going to do bank transfers. So then the vendor says, okay, fine. Then they get this new bank wire transfer information. And then there's an approval for, a wire transfer of $500,000 for the next payment instead of sending the check. However, a couple of weeks later, vendor calls up and says, hey, why didn't you pay this invoice? And we're not going to ship any products until you pay this invoice. Well, the supplier says, well, we did pay it. We wired it to your new bank account. And then, the parties talk and they realize, hey, I never got this money. It was fake. It was a phony. Someone hacked into their email. This is wire transfer fraud. And unfortunately, this is becoming, I hate to say common, but it's just happening so much. We really, wanted to warn you about this issue. If you can go to the next slide, I'll just highlight a few things that you could do. Again, we got to do this breach analysis. Did someone break in? How did they get our email? Did our IT company do the right thing? Do we have any evidence of, who actually was in the wrong here? And it's not always clear who's got to pay this. In this case, in this scenario, $500,000. I changed the names and the amounts to make, anonymize this, but it's not always clear who's going to have to pay that $500,000. And we can do things in contracts, as Karolina mentioned, to address this exact issue. So that's something else to keep in mind. This could be solved contractually if you're thinking about it. And if the dollar amounts are big enough, it's absolutely worth it. And the one thing I tell people too is have a wire transfer policy. Sometimes even insurance companies require this to get insurance, but have a wire transfer policy that you can't just change payment information with an email. It's got to be secondary source of confirmation. And I've even had dealt with instances where the bad guys have a phone number and somebody's answering the phone and they will answer it and say, oh yeah, that's right. So you got to really think about, all right, do you know your customers and clients and people who are paying you money, and how do you change that information? You make sure that you have kind of a secondary means to do it. So that covers cybersecurity. And I'll kind of pass, or let me cover one more slide here, but I think that sometimes it's easy to get scared and say oh, what do I do? Let me give you some proactive steps you can take. Number one, train your employees, right? Don't just rely on emails. Look for emails that could have red flags in them, that could cause suspicion. Have the proper policies and procedures. We can help with that, but a lot of times your IT vendors have good policies and procedures they can help you with too. The third one is have a breach response team. Something happens, you already have a team and you can actually practice. It sounds kind of funny, but you sit in a room and you actually go through the practice. You get the key stakeholders in the same place and you run through a practice scenario. What happens this? Who's doing what in the order? Have proper insurance. I think that's a huge one. Make sure you have insurance, but make sure you understand it. A lot of times when we've been in these breach situations, people think they have insurance and then it's not as good as they thought. You can also get kind of credit monitoring and make sure you review your service contracts. So I think that's it on cybersecurity now. But watch out, take care of yourselves. And remember, don't feel crushed if something does happen. It probably will. Just be ready for it when it does.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. That was very good. And Karolina, awesome. I appreciate you going through CTA and contracts. And, when we kind of talked about CTA, contracts, IP, and cybersecurity, the idea was we wanted to pick out a few key things. I know we get a lot of questions about employment. We'll be talking more in deep detail about employment in one of our future meetings with you guys and getting together. We want to pick out some ones we thought maybe you have or you haven't kind of touched base on. So, with the CTA, it's kind of a wait and see what's going to happen. But, obviously SBAM's done a great job with protecting its members with that, and we're grateful for that. When you think about contracts, I mean, I don't know if you guys really looked at some of those statistics, but I can tell you as a professional that works as an outside general counsel for clients, one of the biggest issues we see from day to day is not the contract, it's the dispute that happens because of a relationship, whether it be internal or external. And is there the proper documentation? And did the documents actually memorialize what the parties wanted? We call them business terms. Are the business terms really in the documents that you're looking for? And I can't tell you how many times, I don't care how big the business is, they just signed a document. And I'm like, did you read it? And I get it, you maybe don't want to read it, and there's nothing wrong. I'm going to tell you, there are resources out there that we refer people to online that can generate a contract for you. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those, because based on budget, it may be a good solution, but does it actually protect what you want it to protect? I want to make sure that's what I want you to get out of that is are you actually protected? And when it comes to IP, because you can't touch or feel it. When it's real estate, it's easy. We can touch or feel it. When it's personal property, we can touch or feel it. When it's intellectual property, it's in the air, so to say. And how do you can't touch or feel it. So it's so easy to just not think about it, but it can be such an important asset of the business, sometimes called goodwill. It's such an important thing to think about. And, I put in the chat real quick, or someone did, about just cybersecurity and all the amazing resources SBAM has given to its members over the years. I love being part of this association and working with them. They've been on the forefront of really providing value to the members. And I know since the beginning, cybersecurity has been such an important thing. We've done a lot of speaking around the state on that, and just really helping to make sure the small businesses are protected, because, God forbid someone does have an incident, it can be crippling to a business. And the last thing we want to do is have that happen to you. That's why this is so important about protecting your assets, protecting your business. If you can protect your small business, it's important. And the last one that I'm going to touch on is a little bit more forward facing. When I meet with great, entrepreneurs, small business owners like yourself, a lot of times we don't discuss or think about our immortality. We don't discuss about what tomorrow looks like. We're just worried about today. We're in the business. We're enjoying the business. We're working in the business. We're being challenged by the business. But are we thinking about what happens next? And that's not necessarily something we do. It's not something we do as a society in America. So succession planning and estate planning are two things that often get overlooked. If you've already done this, you're ahead of the curve, and kudos to you. If you haven't, don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong. There's plenty of time to look into this. I just think this is such an important thing that often does get overlooked, because even if you did all these great things to protect your business, to protect your assets, what does the next chapter look like? One day we're all going to go to Fiji, not figuratively, literally, and we're not going to be here. And when we're not here, what happens to our business? And so making sure you have, and I made a distinction there, a succession plan is really the strategy to make sure you have the right people to figure out what's going to happen next. At some point, you're not going to be here, or you're not going to want to be here. And what does that succession plan look like? And it doesn't make a difference the type of business that's out there. Everyone should be thinking about that. And it's never too early to start thinking about that. Some people see me online. You see me talking a lot about this for all kinds of businesses. It even applies to us lawyers. As an example, right now, the State Bar of Michigan just implemented a mandatory policy that every lawyer in Michigan must define who's their successor if something were to happen with them. It's a hot topic, not just for lawyers, but all businesses to think about. When you think about estate planning, they fall in the same bucket, but very different. The estate planning is really having the right documents in place so you have a process for being able to manage and dispose of your personal estate during your lifetime or after you go to Fiji. And so the main goal of this is really to make sure your assets are in order, you know what's going on with them. And the key is you minimize tax and legal complications. And it doesn't affect you because you're now in Fiji. It affects those people who come after you, your children, your grandchildren, your siblings, maybe your workers. Maybe it's your cat or your dog. I'm saying that not to be funny, because they could be your heirs. And making sure those are protected is a really important part. And your estate plan is something that can be done. And I think one of the things I'll just caveat before we go to the next slide is we talked about a lot of things here, and it can sound super complex. Well, we're here to make it not complex for you. It also can sound super expensive. because of our relationship with SBAM, we do a lot to really make sure we're providing a cost-effective, high-quality solution to you. And a lot of these solutions can be done on a fixed fee or a budgeted basis to really make sure for the members of SBAM they're benefiting. And that's one of the benefits that we at Mavacy look to provide to the members of SBAM. So with that, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll kind of dive into these really quick. So why are they so important? And you know, there's all business owners on this phone right now and this call, and you know, hopefully we're going to pass this on for generation to generation. Maybe you're going to sell it. That is good. That is a good option always. Maybe you're just going to wind it down. It was great. It was a great journey for you. But not all second and third generations want to stay in the business. I've been fortunate enough to be part of the transition for some entrepreneurs who own their business who wanted to move on. And I've also had the opportunity to work with the second and third generations. And in one case, a fourth generation, which is the coolest thing to see someone take their mom and their dad's or their grandma and their grandpa's or their great grandma and great grandpa's business and continue to move the legacy forward. It's something that's really cool, real special. It's a dynamic you don't see every day, and that isn't for most people. So if you're in that situation, no, I'm a second generation, I don't want to do this anymore, or I don't have a second generation to give it to. That's not uncommon. It's not something to be embarrassed about. You know, someone may not want to continue to be part of the ice cream business. Someone may not want to continue to be part of the furniture business. Someone may not want to continue to be part of the law firm. Those are all things, that's okay. The real question is, how do we deal with that? How do we allow the business to continue to go? Is it to an outside buyer? Is it a succession plan to the employees? What are we doing to build that strategy for the business so it can continue to have that legacy that our visionary founder entrepreneur had when they started? The other thing, which, you know, I mean, I'm not here to say this is important to you, but for a lot of people, they don't want to pay as much in taxes as a business owner if they can. You may not want to, or may be okay with that, and that's totally fine. For some people, they come to us and they say, hey, I know this is going to have an implication. And if we do things now, prior to a sale, prior to, you know, someone departing, you're able to look at some of the reducing the income and or estate tax liabilities. This is my chance to throw in a disclaimer. This is not considered to be legal advice. If you'd like to talk more, we can do a one-on-one to really talk about your specific situation. And, you know, the first call around that, there's no charge for that. More than happy to talk with you about that to see if it's something we or one of our strategic partners can do to help with. But that's a really important part of why people do estate and succession planning. The other thing is a simple one in the state of Michigan. If you have a will and trust in place, you avoid probate. What does that mean? Well, upon you going to Fiji, what happens to your assets? It has to go to probate. And the way to avoid probate or to mitigate what the implications of probate is to have a will or a trust in place. And that may not seem like a big deal until someone's unfortunately had a deal with one of their family members or spouse or someone departing, no longer being with us. And then you have to deal with everything that comes with that. And anyone who's gone through that knows the pain and suffering that can go with that. And so taking the time, and I don't care if you call us, you call someone else, but taking the time to make sure you do that. If not for yourself, do it for your loved ones, do it for your heirs. Do it for the people who are going to be dealing with it when you're not here. It's such an important part that often gets overlooked. And for those commenting in the chat, thank you so much for your feedback and insight. And, you know, I don't know, you know, who else in chat has had that done, but or had to deal with it, but love to hear your comments or feedback. And I know we're going to open it up at the end. The last thing I would say is protecting assets. As small business owners, we may have heard, hey, if you have a piece of real estate, put it in LLC. I don't know by a show of hands who's had that, but that's something that's usually you'll hear. Or, you know, like John said, oh, mail yourself a letter and you protected it. We've heard all those things, and some of them are true, some are legal myths, but we've heard all those things. Protecting your assets is a real thing. And as you accumulate more assets, you want to protect them. And there are some very easy strategic ways that you can go about doing that. And I'm talking about more than just putting an LLC, an asset in an LLC, because yes, that does protect you, but that LLC can still have liability. And without getting too much in the weeds, if you have a 1099 that LLC is rolling up to, because it's a single member LLC, the liability ultimately going to end up hitting you in some way, even if it's through a charging order or something like that. And so there are ways that when you use estate planning that you can really protect your assets. It is more advanced than just doing a will or a trust, but as people start to gain assets and gain wealth, it's something I always recommend they do to really protect themselves. It protects their heirs. It can be used as marital assets to provide for a prenup. There's a lot of benefits that go with it intrinsically, especially as you're looking to create a wealth or a legacy and move that forward. So those are some of, I'm going to pause there. I'm very passionate about this subject, as you can tell, but if you want more information, we're more than talk about it. So in the last few minutes, we want to make sure that we open up and open the discussion, as Kelly said. But I'll leave you with this: is that one day, well, before we even go to one day, we ask you and that you implore you to think about protecting your assets, whether it be the business, the IP, your relationships, whether it be employee or vendor relationships, doing the contracts. Making sure you look at your cybersecurity so some incident doesn't cost you. That's the first part. The second part is you're going to transition from your business one day, and taking the time to make sure you've protected this asset called your small business will ensure your success to yourself and the next generation, whether it be through a sale, a succession plan, or something else of the sort. So with that, on behalf of myself, on behalf of John, on behalf of Karolina, I want to thank you guys. There's our contact information. Feel free to reach out. If you go to the SBM website, there's the legal Ask an Expert opportunity that you can get a hold of us there. I know we threw a lot at you. Do not hesitate to reach out. We're more than happy to talk with you and set up a 15-minute fact-based question for you. So with that, Kelly, I'll turn it back over to you, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I've opened up. Everybody should be able to speak and ask a question to the Mavacy team if you'd like to do so. So we'll give a couple of minutes here for that opportunity.
So
You may have to unmute yourself.
Oh, so Kelly, are we going to do chat, or are we going to they're going to ask questions?
I allowed everybody to speak if they'd like to do it, or if they'd prefer, they can pose a question in the chat.
Perfect. And then Kelly, if no one speaks up, we voluntold someone, right? I'm just kidding. We're not going to call on anyone, but so it looks like did someone have their hand up? I thought I was clicking through.
Oh yes, Lisa Young, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
And I think Tom too. So I think while we're waiting for someone to speak, John, there was a question in the chat.
Oh yeah.
From
I
Edge
see this.
Partnerships, is a service mark the same as a trademark?
Yeah, I'd be happy to just answer that. So generally a service mark, the difference between a service mark and a trademark is there is a difference, but sometimes it doesn't matter. But so for example, a trademark is usually associated with goods, selling a product, right? Service mark is associated with selling a service. But sometimes you see them used where everything's referred to as a trademark. So certainly in federal law, if you look at like federal protecting trademarks federally, a trademark is the same, treated the same as a service mark, but the distinction is just usually if you put, if you want to put like someone on notice that you are claiming trademark rights and you don't have a registration, you put a TM for trademarks and you put a SM for services. So if you're selling services, if you do get a registration, then you don't need to put either one of those. You can just put like that R with a circle around the R that you see all the time. So that's the main time where the distinction actually matters. If you have any more questions on that, just feel free to reach out or put it in the chat.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
Yeah, we don't want to give too much away, else they won't show up to your IP summit you're going to have.
I was going to say Professor Mashni showed up today.
So it sounds like Lisa, but Tom, I thought Tom had his hand up, and I see Hassan, and then I see Sharon. Tom still had a question.
All I wanted to say was that it's more of a referrals that John has worked with me on our trademark for years, and then we just changed the trademark, and so we're getting it updated, and I've been very happy with what you've done so far, and I just wanted to give out kudos for that.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah,
thanks. You.
That was unexpected. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Sonny, would you like to go next, Sonny?
Sure. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to thank you guys for your time. It was very informative. I own and operate a construction business here in Metro Detroit, and I think the baseline that I've learned is probably start with trademarking. I'm going to do a little bit of digging. I come from a very ignorant space as far as IP is concerned. I do have a lot to learn, but I'm going to start with trademarking our logo and or website if I find it feasible. What kind of advice would you give as far as how long and what kind of cost I would incur to then file it with the state of Michigan with Laura and myself?
So John, if I can take that, I would
yeah, go ahead.
I would say this, not afraid to answer that, but that'd be a perfect, like, if you want to hop on a 15-minute call and if Kelly, if you want to throw the link in there, Sonny, we'd love to just do a call with you. There's no charge to it. And it'll probably be John or Emily from our team will get on and can give you all the insight resources and send you some follow-up links for that as well. Because the reason I say this, not because I didn't want to answer your question, you asked Michigan and there's a USPTO, and we probably want to understand why you're choosing Michigan over the USPTO and then kind of go through that. But I think that more than happy, if you're okay with that, would love to volunteering John because he's the resident expert, but I'm sure we could hop on and help you if that'd be okay. Would you be open to that?
I'd love to learn. Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
So if we don't get it to you or Kelly, we'll get you the link. And then I think was there one other hand up? Looks like there's two hands up.
Yeah, Sharon, why don't you go next?
And then Mark.
I just wanted to thank you guys for jumping on this call, and also to say to the listeners, like, my business works with estate and trust groups because people don't plan, and that is the biggest mistake I see. I see families torn apart by this. I see businesses torn apart by this, and it is so avoidable. Like, it is 100% avoidable. And doing some pre-planning, like, I have done my pre-planning,
Nice.
but I strongly suggest you guys, because I see this everywhere, because it's prevalent.
Awesome. Thank you, Sharon. It sounds like I'd love to hear more about your business. I'll take that offline, but thank you so much for that, because I totally agree. And I think the last one in the last couple minutes is Mark.
Yeah, but I'll go ahead and close this out. So thank you guys for the information. Great job. Really appreciate it. And actually, Sunny did a great layup for the question. I know for us, we filed our trademark, of course, through the United States Patent and Trademark Office. But if we've done that, is there any benefit to filing through the state of Michigan, or going that route? Is, since we're covering nationwide, is that usually the best route to go, in your opinion?
John, I'll defer to you if you want to give an answer.
I would say sometimes.
Definitely we'll do a call with you, Mark.
Yeah, sometimes there is. Yeah, in some cases there is. I think it's just probably case by case. We probably want to learn more about the business, frankly, right? So.
Yeah, and I think Kelly, thanks for throwing in there. Kelly threw the link, so any of the premium level members can go there, and you'll have an opportunity for a fact-based call with any of us on our team. And would love to talk to you, and we're there to help you. And it's a free resource. We have some members that call every quarter, and they end up with an hour a year. It's great. And we love servicing and supporting them. And so just know it's out there. And if not, feel free to reach out directly to us. Our website, which is www.mavacy.com. I'll put it in the chat, but we just fill out the contact form. We'd love to hear from you. So, I'll turn it back over to Kelly, but on behalf of John, Karolina, and myself, just thank you again. We love serving the membership community, and we're grateful to be partners with us, Pam.
And I also just threw in, sorry, Kelly, our contact info that was already in the slide. And then we put out a monthly newsletter where we cover topics like this. So if you want to be included on that, just shoot me an email and I'll get it over to the appropriate people.
Thank
All right,
you.
I'm done, Kelly.
Yeah, I appreciate the Mavacy team joining us today. As Michael mentioned, they are an SBAM approved vendor for legal services. So not only do they help our premium level member and higher with the Ask an Expert questions, you also receive a discount on their services, including all of what they mentioned today. So please visit our website for more information. If you need to upgrade from a starter or basic member, you can do that online as well. Yes, we have recorded the webinar and we can share the slides with you. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us. And again, I'm so sorry for the delay. Zoom was not my friend today, so I appreciate Sarah Miller on our team stepping in and getting us started. But please, thank you, and reach out if you have any questions at all. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Kelly, I'll send you the slides.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye.